Hi, I'm Kasey, and today we're just gonna really quickly sketch a pumpkin, and then we're gonna paint it. So to start out, we're gonna start with the middle section of our pumpkin. And it's gonna be kind of tall and skinny, like this. Then for the next things we do are gonna be symmetrical. So we're gonna kind of start here, come up and just make a fat little backward C shape there. And then we'll do the same thing over here on the other side. And then we're going to come to the top of this one and make the last one. And then same thing over here. Now, if you want your pumpkin to be like super duper fat, you can still put even more on the sides. That is up to you. I think I'm gonna stop here, and this is where the middle part of my pumpkin stem is going to start. So I'm gonna come in a little bit, and I'm gonna curve mine around. You don't have to make yours curvy if you don't want to. But I like a little curve like that. I think that's cute. And that's our pumpkin. So now that we've got it drawn, we can go ahead and start painting it. All right, for this paint version, I'm gonna show you how to do kind of the blue and purple pumpkin. So this is gonna be a mix of blues, purples, and greens. So I'm going to, first, I'll start with green. And I'm going to paint this middle section all in green, but it's going to be kind of a very watery green. And we just kind of want to fill this in so that when we paint, we're going to be painting wet on wet, which, if you ask me, is the most magical way to paint with watercolor. I just love watching them interact when you maybe can't control it 100%, but you know that something really cool is gonna happen. I love it. All right, so I'm trying to stay in my lines. If you don't, it's all right. It's gonna look fine at the end. All right, so this section is kind of wet, so I'm gonna go into my blue. And I'm going to kind of add some blue along this edge. We're going to see how this works out for us. So I'm going to put some blue on that edge. And maybe I may need to water this down a little bit. If you ever need a thinner version of paint, you can just bring some paint over into the lid and just work from there. Sometimes when you dip right out of the pan, it's too much color. Ooh, this is pretty, what's happening over here. So I'm just gonna dab a little more blue because I like what's going on, but I want it to be bluer. And then it looks like this is drying a bit, so I'm going to add some water to it. And then what color should we do up here on this edge? Should we do purple? This is my purple. It looks black in this palette, but it's purple. So I'm going to grab purple, and I'm going to go on the other edge kind of with some purple and see what happens. Dab that along the edge and let it mix and mingle with the other paint. I'm trying to get all the way to the edge of this green and just let that purple paint do its magical stuff. That's what I love right there. And I'm just gonna dab it over that wet paint And this is going to help give a little bit of dimension to our pumpkin sections. I'm going to water some green down over here. I have kind of this is maybe green mixed with a little bit of black that was already mixed over there. So you could do that if you want to get that more forest green kind of color. But I'm just going to come and put some more of that green in the middle. And I'm going to really ask these paints to please mix with one another. That would make me very happy. So it's kind of a spooky looking pumpkin at this point. That's all right, that's what I'm going for. Fun and spooky. All right. So I'm gonna let that section dry like that. And now I don't want to work on this section right next to it. I want to work on these outside sections. So do I want to start with green or do I start with blue? I think I'm gonna start with blue on this outside section. And then I'll add some green at one edge and some purple at the other edge. I think that will be interesting as well. So I like to kind of lay down a light coat of water first, because that helps. Once I have a lot of pigment on my brush, then the water already being on the paper will kind of direct the new paint as to where I want it to stop, where the borders are. So I'm just making my little water border. Just in very light blue. We can come back and we can put more blue in here if we want in a little bit. For now, I just want a little tiny bit of blue. All right, going in for the green. I'm getting some green, and I'm going to start at the top part here with the green and bring it down and around on the top edge of this pumpkin. That is a good time. And then for purple, I'm going to bring purple in this inside edge here. And I know it is traveling to the outside edge, but I'm only purposefully going to put it on this inside edge, and we're going to see what happens. I think that I know what will happen, but it's watercolor. I don't really always know what's going to happen, and that's what makes it fun for me. All right, so that's kind of blue and purple. Now I'm going to put some more blue in the middle here. I'm just going to take a streak through the middle. That was so much fun. Oh, I love it. So I'm just going to dab some blue, and then we can put a little, maybe a little more blue in the middle. Let's see. Oh yeah, I like it. It is looking kind of spooky. I'm a fan of this. Okay, maybe we need a little more green up at the top. Green. All right. So then we're sort of going to do a mirror image on this section. What did I do? I started with blue in a very light layer. And I'm just using the tip of my brush to go right along that line that I drew. And I'm not picking up more paint at this time. I'm just putting down my little layer of water. So I'm flattening my brush and just dragging it along that edge, and I'm lifting it as I get to the skinnier part. This isn't a really super special brush. It's just a round brush with a pointed tip. If you have the Prang paint set, the brush that comes with that paint set is very similar to this one. So you should be able to do this kind of work with that brush that came with your paint kit. All right. So then what did we do? We put the green at the top. So let's go into the green and just dab that along the top. Oh, that's fun how that's traveling. Look at that. Woo! Okay, and then we'll put some green, a little more along the top and the side. And then we'll come from the bottom with our purple. So we'll come here and we'll just, this purple is gonna just have a good time because there's a bunch of water pooled down here at this little point. So I'm gonna try to drive it up this way. Sometimes that water does what we want it to do, and sometimes it ignores us. All right. So I'm gonna put a little more. And then I'm gonna put in the blue. Just like we did last time. I just came through the middle with like a swipe of blue. Tapped it around. So I'm going to do that here as well because I do like the blue. I want this blue to be my main color. I'm a fan of it. Alright. So I'm going to try and scoot some of this water into this edge here to make it a little darker. And remember, this will dry lighter probably than what we're seeing. All right, so now for the next part, we need this to be really dry. So you can grab your hair dryer, you can grab anything that you would like and go ahead and dry it. I'll be back after I do that. All right, so this is good and dry, and I'm gonna go ahead and paint these side sections. And I think I like the way the blue in the center looks. So I'm gonna go with that strategy for these side sections. You're welcome to take off in your own creative direction if you want to, but this is what I'm gonna do for now. And that is not watery enough. And for now, I'm not gonna go absolutely up to the edge. I'm just gonna come really close. And you want to make sure that this paint is very, very dry on the edges before you start painting next to it. And I'm going to be a little less watery than I was in the standalone sections that didn't have any boundaries on the sides of them. Not a lot less, but a little bit less. And this paint might bleed a little bit, but I'm not going to be okay with that. I think it'll be fine because I'm just going to put more paint there. But hopefully it participates and it stays dry over there. All right. And then I'm going to do the green at the top like I did in the others. I did like the way that turned out. So I'm going to do green in this top section. And this is tricky right here at this edge because you don't want to paint over that part, but you have to paint over it a tiny bit. All right, so I've got my green at the top. I'm going to put my purple at the bottom. I'm going to come right at this bottom edge and just pull that purple over sideways. And dab it upward just with the tip of that brush. And I'm going to bring it right along the border of the next section. Same over here. And I'm just pulling it down. All right, and then I'm going to put some more blue in the middle. And this is where it's really gonna get fun. Woohoo! And I'm just dabbing that blue in there because I don't want the colors to blend completely. I want to let the watercolor itself do a little bit of this work for me. All right, so that looks pretty good. And then we have this other section over here to work with. So I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna start in blue and just get this whole section wet. When I was drawing this pumpkin, I was thinking, no, I'll do even more sections. I'll make it really big and really fat. And you could always add sections if you think you want your pumpkin to be fatter. You could add another one there and another one there. But as I'm painting this, I am happy that I stayed with a small number of sections because I am looking forward to being done with it. So I'm being really careful along this border, and then, you know, sort of careful along this border. I want to cover all that white is what I'm trying to do without going over onto the other section. And that can be a challenge when it's not the area that's really comfortable for your wrist. If you have your paper taped to something that you can turn, that's always a good idea. All right, green, here we go. So I'm gonna add some green just right at the top there. I think for this section, I'm gonna bring the green around the center here. And then I will grab some purple and take it along this outer edge. Oh, my paint is totally... All right, my water got into this other section, which is not really what I wanted, but it's just what my paint's gonna do. So I'm gonna work with it, see what happens. Let's pull this purple down in the bottom section here. Maybe up a little bit. And then let's see, I'm gonna pull some blue through the middle. And that should be really nice. Oh yeah. This is almost looking a little galaxy, isn't it? I'm loving it. I'm really, really excited to see what it looks like when it dries, because the pigments are gonna do fun things like this. And we just don't really get to find out until it's dry. All right, I think I want some more purple at the bottom. It's maybe not saturated. Oh, there we go. That's nice. And dot a little bit more around here just for good times. So I am liking what's going on. All right. Now we can paint the stem. But you gotta be careful, and you gotta make sure like this edge is dry and this little edge is dry right here. So you might wanna grab your dryer and just go over those really, really quickly. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna dry just this top section. Just that part. The rest of it can just dry on its own, however it's gonna dry. All right, so for the stem, I think I'm gonna go with brown, and then I'll probably add some black. But here at the beginning, I'm gonna just do brown. And I know that I'm gonna paint my background, so that's why I haven't put any like cute little curly cues on here, because I don't wanna have to paint around them when I do my background. I'm trying to make a little bit less work for myself later. But if you are not going to paint your background and you would like more little curly cues off to the side, you're certainly welcome to add those to your art. So I still want this to be translucent. I want to be able to see the texture of that paper behind the paint still. And painting this part isn't, for me, maybe for you it is, but for me this part isn't as fun as the lower parts where we painted and we got to watch the paint do all that interesting stuff. That's really where the fun is for me. But some people like the detail-y things. They can be very relaxing when your mind doesn't have to think about anything but just putting that paint on the paper. That's why we like art so much. All right, so I'm just getting this little stem full of brown paint all the way through. This is the point where I would turn my paper if I could, because I don't like painting at this angle. But that's all right. I will do it for you. And I'm going to wait till this brown dries a little bit more, and then I'll go back and put some detail in there. But I think it's looking pretty good. I hope that yours is looking well. I see this section over here. It's kind of drying. And it's got a weird edge. But I think that's just how it's going to be. I'm going to let it be. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and dry this, and then I'll be back. All right, so this is all dry now, and I'm gonna go ahead and re-stick this tape because I can tell that it's lifting because I used that warm air out of my little hair dryer. So now what I have to do is decide, what am I doing with this background? And since this is all in pretty purples and blues and these dark, cool colors, you could stay in that range, or you could make your background just the complete opposite, which I think is what I want to try. So I'm going to start in with some yellows here. Similarly, if you did like a yellow pumpkin and you used oranges and reds, then maybe you could use the purples and blues in the background. So I'm going to just take this over to the other side, and it's light color, and my color is real light, so I don't actually have to get really close to this pumpkin, and it still looks just fine. So what I don't want is for any of that color that's in the pumpkin to run into my pretty yellow background. I don't want it to get green. So I am just kind of scratching in some paint. Put a little more yellow in here. I'm kind of trying to keep the dark yellow at the corners and create maybe a little vignette effect. And that way I can stay real light around the pumpkin and it's still gonna look good. Now you have to use so much more water than you want to do this. So I want you to make sure that you're dipping into your water and you're pulling water onto your paper, because that is what's gonna make it magical. So I'm trying really hard to not touch that pumpkin. Now I might actually touch it and we might have some paint bleeding, but my goal is to not do that. So we'll see what I can do. So here at the edges and the corners, I can put a little more of that color. It can be a little darker there. There we go. And then I'll do the same thing up over here at the top, and that's a little bright, so I want to make sure that I'm just thinning it out as I get toward that pumpkin, so it almost just fades. I just want it to fade and kind of look like that pumpkin is a little glowy. tiny bit more yellow down here. All right. I think it is working out well. I'm liking it a lot. Need a tiny bit more color coming from over there. I'm going to try to keep that pigment toward the edge and keep my area near the pumpkin super duper pale and not touching the pumpkin. Now here is a tip. If you do touch that pumpkin and your paint starts to run, grab a paper towel really quickly and kind of dab it so that you can catch the part that's running, and then maybe later you can go in and kind of dilute the part. Run some water over it and kind of lift it. That's a good way to fix your little mistakes like that. Or you could just let it bleed and see what it looks like. It might be kind of cool. You're the artist, so you get to decide. That is your privilege. And nobody can tell you how you should do it because it's your art. All right, so I definitely think that this background needs some speckles, but I don't want my pumpkin to get really speckly. So I'm gonna tear off a piece of paper towel that's roughly the size of my pumpkin. And let's see. Oh, that's way too big. Okay. I'm just eyeballing this. I'm like, okay, that'll work. If I get a few speckles on my pumpkin, I'm gonna be okay with that. Let's see, what color speckles should we do into our yellow background? It's gotta be wet for this to really work, so I'm just making sure it's still wet in some of these places that maybe it's dried. All right, maybe I'll do some orange speckles as an ode to the color that pumpkins have traditionally been painted. And I think that the bright color is gonna look really good with the yellow. So I'm mixing up some watery orange. Speckles need to be nice and watery. And then I'm gonna tap on my pencil here. Whee! There we go. And you can see how those speckles are kind of like blending into the background, and that's what I wanted. Some of them aren't, that's all right. Let me cover this up while I'm over here in this corner. This is so fun, I'm loving it. I also feel like if I had white paint, I might speckle the actual pumpkin. Now I did get one little orange speckle on my pumpkin, so I'm gonna bring my brush over here and I'm just gonna try to lift it. There we go. Now it's not as bad. I actually like the way that orange speckle looks on the pumpkin. You can leave it as it is if you want, or if you want to get a little experimental, like I'm about to do, I'm gonna speckle some yellow onto this pumpkin. So I'm getting some yellow and I'm mixing it with just water over here, because I think that yellow is gonna, oh no, the orange has infiltrated. I need to clean my tray so I'll have more space to mix. I'll mix it right here. Some people even have a whole palette simply for putting their paint on, but I know a lot of you don't, so I'm gonna show you how I do this with just the bare stuff here. All right, and I don't need to cover my background because it's yellow anyway. Oh yeah. All right, I do not regret that. That is gonna look really interesting when it dries. Because I think what's gonna happen is it will dissolve a little bit of that paint that's underneath it and just be very, very cool looking. Okay. Give it some bigger yellow speckles. And then I think I'm gonna call it. I think I love it the way it is. I was gonna go, if you want, you could grab a little bit of brown And you could go back in and you could kind of make some little lines on here just to give it some texture. Oh, look at that, I messed up. Goodness gracious. Okay, so I'm gonna try to dab that off and save. There we go. Save my little stem. So I'm just gonna put some lines, almost like you're making tree bark. And this little stem that's kind of woodsy. So there we go, that's my pumpkin. I'm loving it. So now I just need to do the amazing tape pull. Woo. Oh, this tape is awful. Okay. It's a little more magical when your tape is obeying. But that's not what I'm getting today out of this tape. Okay, there we go. There's my pretty edge. Let's get this one down here. Ooh, I like that big speckle right there at the bottom. Now the tape is cooperating. All right, and the last one across the top. It looks so good. And as always, we want to sign our art. So there we go. It is done.